afternoon, everyone. Bill DuBois here in Greenville, Texas. This is Saturday, October 16th, 2021. And tomorrow we will be continuing our study in Daniel, chapter 6. Now, I have a New Living Translation Bible that gives me an insight into some of the, his baby, he's mad because I'm not playing with him right now. So as you can see, we're going to go into my Bible, which is the New Living Translation. And this Bible has some areas in it that are like synopsis or extra commentary by the authors of the book. It talks about each individual main character within each book. And this particular book, we have Daniel, of course, and then we're going to have Daniel's three friends, which I butchered their names, so I'm not even going to attempt it. And then we also have the king Nebuchadnezzar. And so we will continue on with some readings that we're going to be doing. But in the meantime, I have a little puppy next to me who wants me to throw the ball. So with that being said, I will stop and start again. While Ezekiel was ministering to the captives in Babylon, Daniel was drafted as a counselor to King Nebuchadnezzar. With God's help, Daniel interpreted two of the king's dreams. Daniel's three friends were rescued from certain death in the blazing furnace, and Daniel was rescued from the lion's den. Daniel's life is a picture of the triumph of faith. May God grant us this type of faith so that we may also live courageously each day. So that's that little section right there, and then I'm going to go and stop this thing, and I'll come right back. So we can see that Daniel has been really helping the king here, but our buddy Nebi has a small problem. He doesn't learn it. It takes him all the way through the end of chapter 5 for him to finally realize that the God of heaven is the one and only true God. But it takes a little while, a little convincing, and some things have happened. So we're going to continue on with another section of this book. And it's a couple pages over. And this is going to be a synopsis or bio of Daniel. It's going to cover a couple of paragraphs of him. And it's going to go with his strengths and accomplishments, lessons from his life, vital statistics, and key verses. So let's get started as soon as I throw the ball one more time. So I'm going to start reading some of these other sections within this book, this Bible. BB is stubborn. He's not giving me the ball back, so maybe he'll give me a break for a little while. Anyway, I'm going to start reading this portion right here. Daniel's early life demonstrates that there is more to being young than making mistakes. No characteristic wins the hearts of adults more quickly than wisdom in the words and actions of a young person. Daniel and his friends had been taken from their homes in Judea and exiled. Their futures were in doubt, but they all had personal traits that qualified them for jobs as servants in the king's palace. They took advantage of opportunity without letting the opportunity take advantage of them. Our first hint of Daniel's greatness comes in the quiet refusal to give up his convictions. He had applied God's will to his own life, and he resisted changing the good habits he had formed. Both his physical and spiritual diets were an important part of his relationship with God. He ate carefully and lived prayerfully. One of the benefits of being in training for royal service was eating food from the king's table. Daniel tactfully chose a simpler menu and proved it was a healthy choice. As with Daniel, meal times are obvious and regular tests of our efforts to control our appetites. Baby is calling. Continuing on. Do you hold so strongly to your faith in God that whenever happens, you will do what God says? Such conviction keeps you a step ahead of temptation. Such conviction gives you wisdom and stability in changing circumstances. Prayerfully live out your convictions in everyday life and trust God for the results. Now, Daniel is pretty slick. What I mean by that is when someone suggests something, he makes it sound like he's the one that made the suggestion. A perfect example of that is the food. They wanted him to eat the same food as the king, but Daniel said no. But he approached the I guess you want to call him the leader of the young men there. His way of doing so. Well, just let us let's try this for 10 days. We'll just eat vegetables and water, and we'll see what we look like after the end of the 10 days. Well, after the 10 days, guess what? Those 4 guys looked a lot better and healthier than the other clowns that were eating the regular food. So he stayed on that diet. Now, I'm not sure if the other ones were put on that diet or not, but I do know that he stayed on it, and he stayed healthy and strong. So his convictions always seemed to win because he always would go after certain things. An example is when some of the king's wizards and astrologers and all this other good stuff couldn't interpret the dream, so the king says, "Go out and kill them all. Kill all my wisdom servants and all these wise guys." But when they came to Daniel, he said, "Well, why is this punishment so harsh? Let me tell you what the king's interpretation is." So he goes to the king and he says, "Hey, I can interpret your dream," because the king's not going to tell him what the dream is. So Daniel has to figure out what the dream is and how he's going to interpret it. So Daniel goes back to his quarters there, and him and his cohorts out there, the 3 guys, they start praying to figure out what's going on. They're praying to God, and they pray to God and pray to God, and God comes to Daniel in a dream, I think it is, that he tells him what the dream is, and he goes back and tells Nebi that what the dream is, and now Daniel is in Nebi's favor. See? So anyway, let me continue on with this clown next to me with his barking. I'll catch you later. I'll be back as soon as I throw the ball again. Bye. Now we're going to go into some of his strengths and accomplishments, and they're kind of like an outline. They're in like bullet statements. So I'm just not going to count them off 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 like that. I'm just going to read them and then keep on going down until I finish with them. It says, although young when deported, remained true to his faith, served as an advisor to 2 Babylonian kings and 2 Medo and Persian kings, was a man of prayer and of statements with the gift of prophecy, survived the lion's den. Then lessons learned were quiet convictions often earn long-term respect. Don't wait until you are in the tough situations to learn about prayer. God can use people wherever they are. Vital statistics was where Judah and his courts of both Babylon and Persia, occupation, a captive from Israel who becomes an advisor of kings. Contemporaries, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, Nebuchadnezzar, Belshazzar, Darius, and Cyrus. And Daniel, whom the king named Belshazzar, has exceptional ability and is filled with divine knowledge and understanding. He can interpret dreams, explain riddles, and solve difficult problems. Call for Daniel, and he will tell you what the writing means. Daniel 5:12. Daniel's story is told in the book of Daniel. He is also mentioned in Matthew 24:15. Well, that gives you kind of quick scenarios on Daniel. So I'm going to slide on over. I think I'm going to go over and do a... somebody's back. I'll be right back. And there was a section on Daniel's 3 buddies, Shadrach, Meshach, and I think it's Abednego. I probably butchered those too, but there's a section on them as well. So I'm going to be reading that as the next section within this New Living Translation Bible. It's actually a section in the book that's dedicated specifically to these three gentlemen, just like there was one for Daniel, and we're going to have one come up on Nebuchadnezzar. And so anyway, I'm going to read this here in a minute, and I'll be right back. So let's read about these three gentlemen. Friendship makes life enjoyable and difficult times bearable. Friendships are tested and strengthened by hardships. Such was the relationship between three young Jewish men deported to Babylon along with Daniel. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, help us think about the real meaning of friendship. As much as these friends meant to each other, they never allowed their friendship to usurp God's place in their lives, not even in the face of death. I'll be right back. Together, they silently defied King Nebuchadnezzar's order to fall down and worship his gold statue. They shared a courageous act, while others, eager to get rid of them, told the king that the three Jews were being disloyal. While this was not true, Nebuchadnezzar could not spare them without losing face. This was the moment of truth. Death was about to end their friendship. A small compromise would have allowed them to live and go and enjoy each other, serving God and serving their people while in this foreign land. But they were wise enough to see that compromises would have poisoned their very conviction that bound them so closely. Each had a higher allegiance to God, so they did not hesitate to place their lives in the hands of God. The rest was victory. I'll be back in a minute. When we leave God out of our most important relationships, we tend to expect those relationships to meet needs in us that only God can meet. Friends are helpful, but they cannot meet our deepest spiritual needs. Leaving God out of our relationships indicates how unimportant He really is in our own life. Our relationship with God should be important enough to touch on other relationships, especially our closest friends. Guess who's back? I'm going to make it through this study if it takes me all day, so I hope you guys will bear with me. But a lot of this stuff won't be in there because I'm just going to edit through it. Okay, so we're going to go with strengths and accomplishments. Stood with Daniel against eating food from the king's table. Shared a friendship that stood the test of hardship. Success, wealth, and possible death. Unwilling to compromise their convictions even in the face of death. Survived the blazing furnace. We're moving on. There is great strength in real friendship. It is important to stand with others with whom we share convictions. God can be trusted even when we can't predict the outcome. The vital statistics were Babylon, occupations, king's servants and advisors, contemporaries Daniel, Nebuchadnezzar. He's back. He's back. Let's continue on with key verses. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied, O Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God whom we serve is able to save us. He will rescue us from your power, your majesty, but even if he doesn't, we want to make it clear to you, your majesty, that we will never serve your gods or worship the gold statue you have set up. That's Daniel 3:16 through 18. The story of Daniel's friends is told in the book of Daniel, which is the one we're in now. So that takes care of these guys. But you can see the very last part is that when they wanted them to worship their God, their gods, that 90-foot statue of 90 feet high, 9 feet wide of pure gold, and when they refused, they said, okay, I'm going to throw you into I'm going to throw you into this blazing furnace, and which he does. But he gets his strongest soldiers, I guess, or guards, to take these three guys and put them into this furnace. But as they put them into the furnace, they themselves are burnt from the fire. But now, when Nebuchadnezzar comes over, he doesn't see three people in there, he sees four. And we know the fourth one is God, or an angel of God. So after the fire is out, these guys come out. Not only do they not have any singed clothes, there's not even the smell of fire on them. That's a pretty amazing thing when you think about it. But yet you think that Nebi learns his lesson? Oh no, nope. He doesn't learn. It takes something even more worse that affects him personally. Once it hits home, then he realizes, hey, I need to get my act together. So anyway, we'll continue on in a minute. Now, let's do our study on King Nebuchadnezzar. Boy, I'll tell you what, I butcher these names, but you know that I'm doing whatever I can to make sure that I get my point across to you all. So here we go on our buddy Nebi, as we call him. Okay, Nebuchadnezzar was one world leader who decided he could get more cooperation from the people he conquered by letting them keep their gods. Their lands he took, their riches he robbed, their lives he controlled, but their idols he allowed them to worship, sometimes even worshiping them himself. Nebuchadnezzar's plan worked well, with one glaring exception. When he conquered the little nation of Judea, he met a God who demanded exclusive worship, not just his share among many gods. In a sense, Nebuchadnezzar had always been able to rule the gods. The new God was different. This God dared to claim that he had made Nebuchadnezzar all that he was. One of the great conquerors in history was himself conquered by his creator, because we know that's God. So we can see that what Nebuchadnezzar's mode of leadership was to let people worship their own gods, but as long as they did what they told them to do, they took all their. Then he had, of course, Babylon was the largest kingdom in the whole known world at the time. Here we go. We'll continue on. The Bible allows us to note the ways in which God worked on Nebuchadnezzar. God allowed him victories, but he was accomplishing God's purpose. God allowed him to deport the best young Jewish leaders as his palace servants, while placing close to him a young man named Daniel, who would change the king's life. God allowed Nebuchadnezzar to attempt to kill 3 of his servants to teach the king that he did not really have power over life and death. God warned him of the dangers in his pride, and then allowed Nebuchadnezzar to live through 7 years of insanity before restoring him to the throne. God showed the king who was really in control. These lessons are clear to us today because of our place in history. When our attention shifts to our own lives, we often find ourselves unable to see how God is working. But we do have the advantage of God's Word as our guide for today's challenges. We are commanded to obey God. We are also commanded to trust Him. Trusting Him covers those times when we are not sure about the outcome. God has entrusted us with this day. Have we trusted Him with our life? That's pretty interesting. So I see baby's not back from his journeys in the backyard. So I'm going to continue reading here. I'm going to go on to what they call the strengths and accomplishments. Nebuchadnezzar, greatest of the Babylonian kings, known as a builder of cities, described in the Bible as one of the foreign rulers God used for his purpose. weaknesses, though thought of himself as a god, and was persuaded to build a gold statue that all were to worship, became extremely proud, which led to a bout of insanity, tended to forget the demonstrations of God's power he had witnessed, lessons from his life. History records the actions of God's willing servants and those who were his unwitting tools. A leader's greatest is affected by the quality of his advisors. Uncontrolled pride is self-destructive. And vital statistics: where was Babylon? Occupation king. Relatives: father Nebuchadnezzar's son, evil monarch; grandson Belshazzar. Contemporaries: Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Daniel, Jehoiakim, and looks like Jehoiachin. Now, I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise the glory and honor, the King of heaven. All his acts are just and true, and he is able to humble the proud. Daniel 4:37. And it says here, Nebuchadnezzar's story is told in 2 Kings 24 through 25, Chronicles 36, Jeremiah 21 through 52, and Daniel 1 through 4. That pretty much talks about what was done in the book of Daniel. We still have 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. We still have 7 more chapters to go within the book of Daniel. And I'll be right back because I got a dog patiently waiting for me to throw a ball. Right, BB? You want me to throw the ball? You waiting for me to throw? Okay, I'll throw the ball. There you go. 1, 2. Yeah. So, with that being said, we're going to continue on tomorrow with our study in Daniel chapter 6. Like I said earlier, there is a little teaser. It says, can you read the handwriting on the wall? So this is, we're not going to hear any more from Nebuchadnezzar. We're going to hear from his cohort, the next king of Babylon. So with that being said, I'll see you guys tomorrow afternoon when I post the study of Daniel chapter 6. Until then, I'll see you the next time around. Take care now. God bless America. God bless our troops and our first responders. And God bless us all, because we really need God in our lives today. Amen. What's that all about? Huh? Is that your praising in there? Are you chiming in there, buddy? Huh? Oh, Weeby's telling, oh. There he goes. Well, we'll see you guys later. Bye.